shot. And the whole point of these images are to kind of set up the design and the look and the feel of the project. So this is a photograph or a photo montage of a big council estate in Brixton in South London. And my first kind of idea was to be like, what does this look like if a series of robots or robot dwellings are attached to it? So I made a kind of robot favela. That was the first kind of concept image for the project. Then the second one was looking at this scale up. So I looked at Brixton High Street, so I took a whole series of pictures in and out of Brixton, mashed them all together and said, this is what I want my film to look like, or what I want my project to be. And then again, a whole bunch of reference photography, looking at different locations to film in, different bits of architecture they're interested in, basically just gathering as much information as possible before starting the project. And then the next step was to really start planning, because I had about 6 months to make the project, and it was such a huge project that if I didn't plan like every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks, if I didn't plan exactly what I was doing, I wouldn't have finished it in time. So because I was using a mix of filming and a mix of animation and a mix of live action stock footage, I decided, well, how am I going to film these first bits? I thought, you know, someone's going to film on the tripod, someone's going to film with Steadicam, someone's going to film handheld. So I took a big map of Brixton, which is this one here, and kind of marked out all the different locations and all the different types of filming. So red means kind of on a locked camera, green was Steadicam, and blue was handheld. And just kind of worked out like a rough schedule of when I was going to shoot and film everything. And then I put that in so like the first kind of half of the project for the first few weeks, it's really dry, but it's important, so you kind of hit all the deadlines. And then the next stage was kind of previs and then animatics. So as you got my render times take ages, so I didn't want to make any more renders than I needed. So again, just planned out everything in crude animation form. So instead of doing everything fully finished and then being like, oh, let me move to the next one, I kind of had the whole film mapped out by the first 2 months, and then the next 4 months was going through and making it. And these are a series of the images that stills that I took from the film. So the next shot is the breakdown, and that's everything that's modelled for that scene. So on the top right, that's the original footage, original film that we took on the camera, 5D, which I used. Then modelled and textured and rendered everything, and then you get all your passes, which you then composite and then you put on top to kind of build your final image. And at the time I was using After Effects, so then this is like the layer structure of all the different passes and how that all fits together. And this took me like 2 weeks, 3 weeks to do this one shot. And again, the breakdowns for another shot, which again was a robot sitting on the bus. So everything was filmed on the bus first, built the robots, added them to the scene, and then projected the background onto the plane, and then built and adapted the environment. And again, there's a lot of, because we studied architecture, a lot of research went into every single building or every single element that was in each scene. So nothing was kind of random, nothing was selected just because it looked cool. Everything had a meaning and story as well as historically. So this was looking at the Brixton Town Hall, which is the most prominent building in Brixton, and looking at how it changed from 1902 to 1950 to present day, and then to kind of my future adaptation with kind of robot screens and advertising everywhere, and a breakdown of some of the models. And again, this was a collage I've done to kind of give me the ideas about how I wanted it to look aesthetically. And then there was the robots and changing the kind of tracking and changing the environment and using motion capture. So for the robots, as I was doing the project, because I learned animation just kind of through YouTube and teaching myself, so I was kind of getting better as I went. And I think you can tell in the film the animation at the end of the film is better than at the start. But I felt I was getting to grips with motion capture and walk cycles and tweaking the walk cycles for the robots to do what you want to do. And all of these these shots in the market scenes, shot on Steadicam, and all the shops, we went there like 5 in the morning when all the shops were closed, so we had just the closed facades of the shops, and then that meant we could then replace them to whatever shops we wanted, or replace them with advertising, or replace them with billboards, and then have, because it was empty, rather than in the middle of the day, we didn't have to paint all the people out and all the things that would take ages. And then the second sequence, it was all internal, and I didn't want to film this, I wanted to kind of recreate a space, so I've done this one full CGI. And in a sense, it's sometimes easier because you make your environment, or you make the space and you design that, and then you can then move your camera around wherever you want. And so I use these images to first establish the mood of the scenes, and then I kind of cut through them, and then I use them to start thinking about where I'm going to place certain cameras, and what shots I was going to try and get within that. And that process was a bit quicker than tracking each shot and making each individual scene. And again, the third kind of sequence was trying to design all these kind of crazy environments and playing a lot at the start, setting up the world. And then when I decided something, and then I settled in that, choosing my cameras, using different plugins to kind of create different effects, and looking at different like references always, whether they're historical or artistic or whatever, to kind of help design your stuff. And I always think it's a good idea to have a really broad range of where you get your information from. So if you just get your information from CG websites or whatever, it will always look like a CG kind of website, but if you look through a big range of stuff, you'll get a more interesting result. And smashing stuff. And then the riot scene at the end was kind of one of the most difficult, not just technically, but also to kind of get the feeling of what it was meant to be like. So I started again with historical photographs. So in the bottom right, you can see the historical picture, and I remade that with the robots. So I've done like 7 or 8 of these. These are my 3 favourite ones. And so then I started looking at these and thinking these are key things that I'm going to use to tell the story, key points. So you've got this big kind of collision between the police and the rioters. Then you've got a lot of rioters running away, and then you've got a big charge from the police. And I kind of used these kind of elements as key points or key turning points in the story. So then I used photographs and images to make this big collage, and instead of just doing it for a scene, I've done it for the whole sequence. So you're meant to read this from left to right. So from left, you start seeing a big charge from the police, then you start seeing everybody running, and then you see this big collision, and then you see the aftermath. And I wanted to use that as a way of telling the story. And then I adapted that to 3 images in the style of how I wanted to do it. So I used the base images from real photography, then changed that to my version. And then I modelled that as closely as I could and started looking at how I was going to move the camera. And initially I was going to do one long shot, but the problem was that wasn't very evocative. It didn't feel like you were in a riot, so I changed it to lots of much sharper, quicker shots. And then this is a kind of penultimate shot where, I again adapted the photograph, projected the photograph, and then added different elements, robots, and it was meant to show this was meant to show the current time, or the history with my future. And a big part of it as well was obviously the robots. Once I spent probably about a month or so on intermittently designing the characters and getting them to look exactly how I wanted. But again, I didn't have time to design like 50 different robots, so I really kind of only spent my time on 2, the 2 kind of robots who were the protagonist and the kind of police robot. But what I did was I used the same skeleton which I designed, and then changed the bits of the faces and maybe gave him a helmet or gave him something that made it look different enough, but I didn't have to restart and re-rig, and so it all kind of had the same